Genghis Khan, known for his unrelenting conquests and the creation of the largest contiguous empire in history, left behind a legacy that has been both admired and vilified. His military prowess, leadership, and unyielding ambition are still subjects of great discussion. However, one of the darker and more controversial aspects of his reign was how his forces treated the women they captured during their campaigns. The treatment of women, particularly the roles they played in the Mongol conquests, paints a complex picture of power dynamics, cultural practices, and survival in the face of brutal conflict. The Mongols, under the leadership of Genghis Khan, were not just military conquerors. They were also known for their ability to absorb and adapt the customs of the peoples they defeated. This included the treatment of captured women, who were often seen as spoils of war. However, it is crucial to understand that the actions of Genghis Khan and his army regarding women were multifaceted, varying between violent subjugation, strategic alliances, and cultural assimilation. One of the most common practices involved the forced capture of women during raids and invasions. Genghis Khan's empire spread rapidly across Asia, and with each conquered territory, many women were taken as captives. These women were often taken from cities that had been destroyed or from villages that had been overrun. The captured women had very few options in such dire circumstances, either face enslavement or death. The fate of these women was, unfortunately, often tied to the brutality of the conquerors. Some women were taken as slaves and incorporated into the Mongol harem system. This was a deeply ingrained practice in many societies at the time, where women were often regarded as property. These women had to serve the Mongol warriors and were often tasked with domestic chores or were assigned to menial labor. However, a small number of these women did rise in status and influence, especially if they were able to catch the attention of Mongol leaders. What set Genghis Khan apart, however, was his strategic use of women as part of his empire building. Captured women were sometimes married off to prominent men in the Mongol quarter, given to key soldiers as a way of fostering loyalty and establishing alliances. The women who entered these marriages were often seen as integral to the social and political framework of the Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan himself, known for his numerous marriages and relationships with women from different conquered tribes, used these alliances to solidify his rule. There are numerous accounts of Genghis Khan taking wives from the conquered territories, but it's important to note that the relationships were not merely based on power dynamics alone. Some of these women played a crucial role in the administration and culture of the empire. They were not just silent figures, but were active participants in maintaining the empire's stability, whether through diplomatic negotiations, managing their household's military resources, or ensuring the survival of their children, who often went on to become prominent leaders in the Mongol dynasty. However, there is a darker side to this practice. Genghis Khan and his army often engaged in the systematic rape of women as a form of terror. Capturing women for the purpose of sexual violence was not just about physical domination, but also a psychological tool to break the spirit of the defeated peoples. The mass abduction and sexual exploitation of women were part of the fear tactics used by the Mongol warriors, ensuring that the conquered populations remained subdued. Despite the horror of these acts, some captured women were able to leverage their new roles within the Mongol society for their own benefit. Women who were married to high-ranking Mongol generals or officials often found themselves in positions of power and influence. Some of these women, through strategic marriages or their ability to bear sons, were able to ensure the survival of their families and retain a sense of dignity within the confines of their circumstances. The Mongol Empire's complex social structure, which included a large number of foreign women within its ranks, also created opportunities for cultural blending. Over time, Mongol society began to incorporate practices from the conquered peoples, which included integrating the women into both political and cultural life. These women, although initially captives, played an essential role in the spread of Mongol culture and the unification of the empire. The Mongols were known for their tolerance of different religions, and this inclusiveness extended to the women from different cultures who joined the Mongol fold. The legacy of these women is still debated by historians. Were they victims of a ruthless military campaign, or did they help shape the course of Mongol history? It is clear that the captured women were both symbols of conquest and vital agents in the consolidation of Genghis Khan's empire. They were not merely victims. They were survivors, playing critical roles in the expansion and success of the Mongol Empire. While the initial fate of the captured women may have seemed grim, Mongol Empire were far from one-dimensional. The second part of this discussion focuses on how these women were integrated into the Mongol society, the impact they had on its future, and Genghis Khan's legacy concerning the treatment of women, which still stirs debate today. The women's integration into Mongol society, despite the brutal nature of their initial capture, many women who were taken by the Mongol warriors were eventually integrated into Mongol society. As mentioned earlier, some women were forced into servitude or sexual slavery, but others were married off to high-ranking officials or warriors. These strategic marriages were not solely about satisfying the conqueror's desires, but about building lasting relationships that would benefit the empire. Women were often seen as political pawns, but they also became essential pieces in the social and cultural fabric of Mongol life. Mongol leaders, including Genghis Khan, married women from different ethnic groups and tribes as a means of forging alliances. These marriages were considered a way of consolidating power and creating unity among the diverse peoples under Mongol control. In many ways, the Mongols were a product of the diversity they incorporated into their empire, and women played a significant role in this process. They not only represented political bonds but also became symbols of Mongol resilience and unity. One of the most notable examples of this is Genghis Khan's marriage to Burt, his first and most prominent wife. Burt was not a captured woman, but her marriage to Genghis Khan was a pivotal moment in Mongol history. She was not only a wife but also a trusted advisor and political figure in the early stages of Genghis Khan's rise to power. Burt's influence and the marriages that followed between Mongol leaders and women from other tribes helped solidify the foundations of the Mongol Empire. However, beyond political marriages, many of the captured women were given significant roles in the day-to-day operations of the Mongol Empire. They often became leaders of their households, overseeing the military campaigns, managing vast estates, and even participating in the decision-making processes. Genghis Khan's empire was vast and required meticulous management, and these women played key roles in ensuring its success. Women as cultural bridges and influencers over time, the Mongols began to adopt cultural practices from the various people they conquered. And women played a crucial role in this cultural exchange. As more women from different parts of the world became part of the Mongol Empire, they introduced customs, traditions, and ideas that contributed to the evolution of Mongol society. This exchange was especially evident in the areas of language, religion, and art. The Mongol Empire was not just a military conquest. It was a cultural melting pot. The women who came from Persia, China, Central Asia, and other conquered regions helped shape the empire's cultural identity. These women brought with them their skills, knowledge, and traditions, which were eventually absorbed into Mongol society. For example, Persian and Chinese women brought advanced knowledge of agriculture, medicine, and trade, all of which were essential for the economic growth of the Mongol Empire. Moreover, Genghis Khan and his descendants were known for their relatively progressive stance on religious tolerance. Women played a role in facilitating this inclusivity. Many captured women who were brought into the Mongol court were from different religious backgrounds, and their presence helped foster an environment where different beliefs could coexist. Women, whether they were married to Mongol leaders or held other positions within the empire, were often instrumental in introducing new ideas, including Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, to the Mongol world. While women were mostly marginalized in the patriarchal structure of the Mongol Empire, their influence should not be underestimated. Some women were highly educated and skilled in various arts and sciences. They played key roles in teaching their children and the children of their masters, thus shaping the intellectual future of the empire. For instance, some Mongol women were known to have been skilled in horsemanship, archery, and even combat. This reflects the pragmatic approach of the Mongols, where both men and women had a role to play in maintaining the empire's military strength and cultural continuity. Genghis Khan's complex relationship with women. Genghis Khan's personal relationship with women is a subject of much debate. His marriages and relationships with women were often strategic, as discussed earlier, but it is also clear that he had a complex view of women. On one hand, Genghis Khan maintained a large harem, a typical practice for rulers during that time. On the other hand, he valued loyalty and strength, and many of his wives were powerful women in their own right. One of the most significant aspects of Genghis Khan's rule was his ability to maintain order and control over a vast empire that stretched across Asia and into Europe. To achieve this, he needed the support of his family and trusted allies, including women. Genghis Khan's ability to maintain strong familial ties and form powerful alliances through marriage was one of the reasons for his success. His reliance on strong women as advisors and leaders within his empire suggests that, while he may have engaged in practices that treated women as spoils of war, he also recognized their value in the long-term success of his empire. Yet, it is impossible to overlook the fact that Genghis Khan's empire, like many other empires of its time, was built on the backs of captured peoples, women included. These women were often forced into submission and subjected to violence and exploitation. The darker side of Genghis Khan's legacy lies in the treatment of these women, whose lives were forever changed by the horrors of war and conquest. Legacy and reflection in the end. The legacy of Genghis Khan's treatment of women is a reminder of the complex dynamics of power, survival, and cultural integration. The women captured by his forces were not mere victims. They were survivors and, in many cases, agents of change. Their experiences, though tragic, helped shape the Mongol Empire and influenced its development. The legacy of these women is a testament to their resilience and the enduring impact of their contributions to history. As we reflect on what Genghis Khan did with captured women, it becomes clear that their roles were far more intricate than simple subjugation. They were not just captives. They were integral to the empire's rise, shaping the future of one of history's most powerful empires. The complexity of their stories, whether as victims, survivors, or powerful players, demands that we view Genghis Khan's conquests through a multifaceted lens, acknowledging both the brutality and the survival that defined the lives of these women.